All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for being with us this morning. I am John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff_2020. And, we are so happy this morning to be continuing the celebration of Christmas with a visit here from the great Addy, Addican. And let me fix this little audio thing, and, okay, there we go. So now, let me introduce once again, on my far right, your left, Addy Addican. Good morning, Addy.
Good morning, John. Thank you so much for inviting me and extending an invitation to be on the McDuff channel. Been watching you for several months, along with George, of course, and I feel very lucky to be here.
Well, likewise, we're glad to have you with us. And good morning, George Webb.
Hey, everyone, and I just want to let everybody know that Addy can multiply. It adds ADDS on the end because that's just his name. So, but he can multiply. So, and he can type faster than you can believe. I think you're at 80 words a minute or something like that.
Yeah, on a good day.
Yeah. So anyway, so that helps when you have to rewrite books that have been destroyed. So yeah.
So he multiplied your book?
I wish. I could have used. Well, actually, the first one we did, we're done with it already, is Let's Call Him McDuff. And he did that yesterday. He's doing Blackberries Matter today. So he's blasting through these. And I can't keep up with him because I always want to add more stuff. I want to always add more stuff and do more research. And so, but we'll be coming out with all these here pretty quick. So
I have, well, at least two questions. I'll just limit it to two for now. Okay, number one, do you do footnotes?
I do, yeah, and we are,
yeah.
All right.
That's actually probably my favorite part of the process is finding words or nouns, pronouns that people may not know. Because there's this cognitive bias. I think it's called the curse of knowledge bias, which is a bias wherein most humans tend to forget what it's like not to know something. So a guy like George, who's like an encyclopedia, doesn't know what it's like to not have all that info in his head, right? So I try to go through and find terms that the layman may not necessarily know and define those in the footnotes.
Wow. I like you, man. And you can edit
Does
my
George
book
Webb
anytime.
need one of those? Yes.
And of course, the second question, and I know this one is going to hurt. Are you going to have an index?
Yeah, we're going to do an index. We're doing footnotes.
Index. Yeah, stick with index. Because I personally am a great fan of books that have indexes in them. And George knows why.
Yeah.
Because you can then go to the back of the book. Like you're looking for something on Colby, right? Well, you pick the book off the shelf, you go turn to the index, you go to the letter C, and if it doesn't have Colby in it, then you put the book back on the shelf.
Right.
How long does it take? 30 seconds?
Right.
But if it doesn't have an index, the most wonderful books in the world, like the one I'm reading right now, Killing the Planet. I think that they wanted to get it out there, so fast because it's a really important book, and but doggone it, there's no index, and I'm like, why don't they just, even with these computers and everything, it shouldn't take that long to make an index.
Yeah, that's a great point, John, and I think adding that to George's books would make it, add a lot of shelf life to it because it would then be used as a research tool for future researchers where people could reference George Webb in the past in his books.
Yeah, so if anybody knows a good automatic indexing thing, my dream is that you go through and every word you footnote, like every proper name, like Nosenko, you just highlight it, and then it goes through and counts how many times you said Nosenko and says it's page 11, 41, 52. So hopefully we can find an automatic index builder. But I think that's, I totally agree with you, John, because if I pick up a book and I open it and it's a Kennedy assassination book and it doesn't say McCone, back on the shelf. Because if you don't know about the McCone memo, you don't know about Oswald being a CIA guy. So boom. Now, for extra credit, if it has Bolton Ford, that's where the Mayhew and David Ferry bought the 10 Fords. Normally, people don't buy 10 Fords unless they were doing gun running for Bay of Pigs. If it has Bolton Ford, that's a bonus
This
because
is not John Bolton's Ford.
well, there may be a relation there, but but I don't know that. But it is Bolton Ford, and that's where Mayhew.
Where's Bolton Ford?
It's in New Orleans.
Okay.
And there's one in Lake Charles still today. The one in New Orleans isn't there. But Mayhew, as everyone knows, is a CIA guy from the day he graduated from Yale. And everyone knows David Ferry is the CIA pilot that was flying weapons all around for Bay of Pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And they buy 10 of these Econoline vans. Do you remember the 1961 Econoline brand new van? They had two. One was kind of funky. It was one of my favorite Tonka truck because it was like the van, but it was open to the outside. It was like a pickup. It was the first pickup. Do you remember those? You would recognize it if you saw it.
I don't like to think about Econoline vans.
Well, anyway.
I have a bad.
Oh, okay. Well, so does Oswald because the name these guys, as John F. Kennedy is swearing in, and it's on the radio of him taking the oath of office, Mayhew and David Ferry are buying the 10 Econoline vans at that dealership, and the name they use, Lee Oswald. The name they use, Lee Oswald.
And they're buying the 10 vans in New Orleans.
For Bay of Pigs.
For Bay of Pigs.
Right.
What are they going to do with the vans for Bay of Pigs?
Well, I say they're taking them from the gun caches in Homa, where the naval base was, and they got to get them down to the port.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to buy them either in Homa, which doesn't have a Ford dealership, or you buy them down by 544 Camp Street, which is where David Ferry's office was, and Lee Harvey Oswald's office was. And so my point being is they knew that Oswald was in Russia at that time. The day John F. Kennedy is taking the oath of office, January 20th, 1961.
He's still in Minsk?
He's still in Minsk. Now that means they know they're going to use him as the patsy. But the patsy for Bay of Pigs, right? It's going to be the patsy for Bay of Pigs. They just repurposed him later on, 2 years later. And see, so if they...
I don't see that. Why is he a candidate for being a patsy for the Bay of Pigs?
Or just a participant. But somebody, Hoover is watching out, making sure that nobody's doing anything hanky-panky under Kennedy's nose without him knowing about it, right? Any kind of covert action. So how is Angleton and Bissell going to do the Bay of Pigs? Eisenhower has already said no in 1960. But so Dulles goes over to two gangsters. One's named Sam Giancana. Mm-hmm. The other is Johnny Roselli in L.A., Sam Giancana in Chicago. And they're going to say, we're going to sub it out to you guys. We're going to give you the money, and you go kill. Supposedly Castro at that time, but you take over Castro, you get your casinos back. So somehow it doesn't happen during Eisenhower's period of time from March 1960 to the inauguration. Now they got to do it really quick because Kennedy's coming in and he's bringing all these Irishmen in that are loyal to Kennedy. So that's why they had to go on the day of the inauguration to buy those Econoline vans.
And they just had this Lee Oswald on the shelf for, to be a patsy whenever needed.
Well, he was Russian speaking as well as being a pilot and had been doing counter surveillance or surveillance on China as well, likely with the U-2. And tying that in too with what George was saying about Eisenhower, is Eisenhower basically declining to upgrade surveillance because he said, what's wrong with the U-2? Is there something wrong with the U-2 spy plane?
Yeah.
So a shoot down was orchestrated such that there's an excuse for we need better surveillance. And but yeah, as far as the patsy for Oswald, I think it's my take that he was probably a likely candidate from the get-go, but maybe not the guy until later on that was chosen to be the scapegoat.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. I can tell you one thing. If you're an inexperienced Econoline van driver, don't try to tow a trailer with a half a ton of sand on it. It's just not going to work out very well for you. You're going to find red lights in front of you that somehow you just can't stop for, and you have a very hair-raising journey in trying to bring said Econoline van to a peaceful and restful stop. And after you're done with that, you got to call the boss and tell him what you did and explain why he doesn't have a transmission anymore. It's an Econoline van.
Yeah,
Sounds like you're speaking from experience there, John.
It's just a theory.
Well, it's a theory, yeah. Well, I almost had, here's the actual testimony right there, talking to the guy who sold the 10 Econoline vans, and there he's, Lee Oswald is the name they use. So this is what I was telling Eddie before about network analysis. It's sort of like when you decide to climb a mountain and you say, okay, I'm going to climb Mount Everest. You don't go, okay, I'm going to read everything there is to know about this, because you may die making a mistake. You go to Mount Everest and you go to the base camp or where the Sherpa camp is, and you say, how do you guys do this? And they say, well, you go up to the base camp and then you'll find another bunch of guys, and then they'll tell you how to get to the next level. So for me, base camp is McCone. If you don't have the McCone memo, you're on the wrong mountain. If you're not on, Lee Harvey Oswald is a CIA agent beginning in 1959 in China, you're on the wrong mountain. Then you get to Bolton Ford is your next level of base camp. If you don't know about Bolton Ford, the day Kennedy is taking the oath of office, you don't know about that, you can't start connecting the dots. Once you start connecting the dots, you get the 5 mobsters that are involved. You can start tying all the CIA guys to all the 5 mobsters in the 5 cities, and then the Miami yarn and string board starts really coming together.
I think that's the great thing about that 27 document release, and the unfortunate thing for all those hundreds or thousands of Kennedy authors who made books prior to that, because at that point it was all speculation. But now, like with George's book, we were talking about the 80-20 Pareto principle earlier, and starting with the most essential, the most vital, the most important information. And that single document, if you could, narrow it down to a single document, is that McCone memorandum, because it says and proves quite clearly that Oswald was a government asset for the CIA.
And just so we can throw in a little bit of evidence here. Oops, sorry about that, folks. There it is. How about that? January 20th, 1961, Bolton Ford, Friends of Cuba. Hey, made a good sale that day. The Friends of Cuba made a nice sale that day.
Okay, so maybe the idea is that if the Bay of Pigs blows up, if it screws up, then they blame it on the Friends of Cuba committee for spilling the beans to Castro. And, so Lee Oswald was going to be the guy that tipped off Castro and got all the good guys killed.
They're going to blame it on, they're going to say, these Cuban exiles, these Friends of Cuba down there in the port, they bought all those trucks. It wasn't CIA. And they drove all those weapons down there. Mm-hmm. And they did it. And boy, that was terrible, Mr. Kennedy. Here's Alan Dulles sitting there.
Yeah.
Anyway, once you put in those two things, now I can go up one more level, which is, okay, where did all this start? And that is Dulles meets with Giancana and Roselli. And then what does Giancana do to try to keep it away from him? Number one, you can't really run the invasion of Cuba out of Chicago. And you can't run the invasion of Cuba out of L.A., where Johnny Roselli was. We need some guys with some ports. And they go inside their organization, which was the Meyer-Lansky Mossad crime syndicate. And Meyer-Lansky is in Miami, where we have an office. JM Wave is what comes out of this. Operation Mongoose. Traficante, where you and I met with Wayne Madsen and so forth, is in Tampa. And then the Carlos Marcelo is in Louisiana, New Orleans.
You got to start saying Marcelo, by the way.
Okay.
I know it's good Italian, but it's bad Louisiana Spanish.
Okay. I like cello because you can just see him marring a cello. He plays the cello badly, but anyway.
No, it's like he's got the cellophane and he's going to put it over your face. And
Okay, all right, that's another good way. Now try to forget Carlos Marcelo. Yeah, but there you go. There's your 5 key actors, and now you go. You can really start putting the connections, the yarn in between these people, because David Ferry is the personal pilot for Carlos Marcelo. Right? Guy Bannister is the guy who is the crooked cop from the FBI guy from Chicago that works for Sam Giancana, and that's who Sam Giancana sends down to 544 Camp Street in New Orleans to have a place for all the CIA pilots to do all their stuff. That's where the Fair Play for Cuba Committee stuff comes out of, with Lee Harvey Oswald going to the radio station trying to paint him as a communist. So it starts coming together. And this is what I wish that could have happened at the beginning of the JFK movie, because people would go, "Oh, I get it. It's the CIA using the mob to do the thing, and then it was all to get Castro, but then they took the money and used it to get Kennedy. I got it. Oh, I see."
And they had been using the mob too for Port Authority since World War II, just because they, the gangsters were already in control of the ports. So they basically
with Meyer Lansky, with the Hellawell plan in 1946. Yeah, so for the drugs. So yeah, absolutely. This goes back, and you're going to see that the relationship goes back all the way to the first days of the CIA. And Doug Valentine's done a great job. But Addy has brought this kind of Occam's razor approach. Like, hey, I'm 25. I don't want to waste 25 of my next years reading all these books. I just want the Cliff Notes. Get me to the test, get me to the top of the mountain. So that's been fun.
Well, there's a lot of hope in that, because I agree. My collection of videos is almost a terabyte at this point, 800 and something on the one I gave you, and there's some more that I haven't fished off my hard drive yet. But if that is interesting enough to folks for you to go through it, Addy, and compress it and make it into sound, what do you call it, bites that can be consumed in a reasonable time. Whether it's, chopping it down to 5 minutes or 15, or making different little sections out of the longer videos that I have. I think it's good work, because I truly do believe in the books that I've read, and it's a great loss not to have them accessible online for anybody that just wants to, plug into, what was Operation Gladio, or, what is behind the GMOs that we've been subjected to, and why is national security always the answer to, why do they do these horrible things, and what does that have to do with national security, that they're going to turn our agriculture into chemically based products that they can sell, and other than it's just that there's money to be made. That's not what this country's supposed to be about. We have to figure these things out. So ScreamingOspreys.com, managed by our wonderful Jumping Mouse, Catherine is her real name, and she volunteers her time every day to update the website and update the YouTube channel here at McDuff_2020. I couldn't do this without her. She is a fabulous, fabulous person, and I keep trying to get her back on the show, because I love to talk to her, and I know you all would enjoy it too. So maybe one day we'll coax her back onto the show. But I guess I had to interrupt for a second just to say thanks. Yeah. Thank you to Jumping Mouse, and to remind everybody that there is the book train that she created. It's still running and going around the mountain and coming back over there at ScreamingOspreys.com. So you can see the books in their glory, and as soon as we can, we're repopulating those books with 1 hour summaries, and as soon as we can get the old recordings back up. So enough out of me. But back to you guys. What else you want to talk about today? We spent a good bit of time on Kennedy already, and I think we're halfway through the show.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this: I spent a lot of time with those files last night, this morning as well, and was able to, get it all fine down to those. So I'm working on that, but I got up at 3 this morning working on it, so that's why I'm a little bleary-eyed.
Wow.
Do you want to go to the bombing? Do you want to go to the bombing?
Yeah, that actually will tie in nicely to what John and I were speaking about last night, too. So George and I did a piece yesterday on the Nashville bombing, which, not all the information is out, and I haven't really updated myself on that since then. But as it pertains to the USS Nashville in World War II, that was a battleship participant in the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which was the greatest or biggest naval battle in history, of which our McDuff, John's father, was a participant. And we were speaking about that last night as well, because it was such a key strategic event in the shaping of the Pacific theater as it pertained to cutting off Japan from the rest of Asia, Southeast Asia. And the Australians helped as well. I don't know if you wanted to speak on your father's involvement in that, John.
Oh my. Well, I will give a plug for a book. There's a book here which is called Humble Heroes, and it's written by Stephen Buston. And I will refer you to this book for the story of the Nashville and right up to Leyte Gulf, and then. Briefly, what happened was after the Battle of Leyte Gulf and MacArthur waded ashore from the Nashville, then the next destination was Mindoro. And to get up there, they had, I think it was Kruger's 6th Army that they were transporting up there to invade and build landing strips for the eventual conquering of Luzon, the northern and the biggest island. So they had to go back through the Surigao Straits, and it was a very vulnerable job. The Nashville was given the job of being the task force, leading the task force of what they call the slow tow. And these are the support ships, carrying all the guns and the ammunition and all the food and everything that was needed for the army to sustain the army's invasion. So this was like a sitting duck. It was a slow tow, and the Nashville was given the job of being the big guy in the middle of this convoy. So that's how a kamikaze was able to hit the ship, and that was the great tragedy of losing over 130 shipmates died in the fire and the explosions, and then there was over almost 200 of them, severely wounded that were hospitalized later at Tacloban in the Philippines. So this is a tragic story, one that my father never told, and I've learned it, on my own since then. It's just been, they didn't talk. Those guys just didn't talk.
Yeah, and I had the chance of going to the National Archives and looking at the deck logs of the Nashville, and I saw that John's dad was mentioned here and there, being the officer of the day every once in a while and so forth. After that kamikaze attack, he's very prominent. So I think that's also where you kind of are looking for the people, if you're Mark MacArthur, the people who got you through that. For the next round, and Krulak is the Marine who's planning the small landing craft boats, I think, for the invasion. And you could see where the secret team or Kennedy's team to smash the CIA starts coming together here, because they're all weathered and with each other in war. And that's where it starts. The landing craft really starts there with World War II. My dad was on those same landing crafts in Bougainville. Krulak was at Bougainville as well. That's where he gave Kennedy the bottle of whiskey, or he supposedly Krulak's men got saved from an island next to my dad's island, not on that New Georgia, but that's how they knew each other. And Krulak went back later, 20 years later, and gave Kennedy that bottle, saying, "Hey, thanks for getting my Marines off the island." So this leads right in. Everything leads right back into, let's call him McDuff, but it shows you that this is how relationships are formed, Yeah,
you beat me to the punch, George. I was just going to mention that for anybody who hasn't read George's book on McDuff yet. He talks about Thomas Francis O'Loughlin pulling men out when after the kamikaze attack, and George read the sickbay reports as well, the men dying for days afterwards just from the burns. Really horrific aspects of war there. But just tying it into George's writing, that anecdote as well as in the McDuff book about John's father.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about Nashville now.
Yeah, Nashville yesterday.
Yeah. And but that's a good segue. But why don't you take it from there?
Sure. Yeah. So George and I did the story yesterday on the 6:30 a.m. explosion in Nashville, which knocked out an AT&T data center and 911 calls for like 100-mile radius or so. And my speculation was this done in coordination with some sort of cover-up or another operation, such that it was a false flag, really. And the interesting thing about it was the fact that it was not only a countdown but a warning to people to stay away. There's a detonation going off, which shows me that whoever was behind it was actively, not only didn't care about casualties, but actively trying to reduce casualties or prevent casualties, which leads me to believe it was either done in operation with something else or simply as a message to someone, to the government or otherwise. And there was also talk, too, of being indicative of an internal war within our government as well. So.
Yeah. Well, and you met Lee Wheelbarger, right, when he was here with the big boat.
Oh, with the boat, yeah.
And he laid cable for DOD, and he all over the world these fiber trunks. And anyway, Lee's doing a lot of great work right now in talking about how this was a major trunk line for the NSA, and the 2006 story that broke with mass surveillance was in this room 641A. I used to work down there in Soma in San Francisco, and that was, whoa, they're listening to all of our phone calls. They're capturing everything. So that was the big story in 2006, and this was supposedly, and it's been proven on the maps, that this is a major hub that would have covered Georgia during the time of the election. So is this, by giving everybody a warning and clearing the building where all those servers were downstairs, now nobody's watching the servers, right? And now you can seize the servers as evidence, which is something that Peter Strzok loves doing. This whole crew loves seizing servers and never. You made a good joke about that yesterday. The FBI's on the case, so we know we'll never see the evidence. But it does look like a building clearing operation, because that's what happened. That's the only reason you would give a warning, is to clear the building so nobody's watching the servers. And I do predict that all those servers will be seized as evidence, and they will move the center. Other people ran it down to the actual trunk line and showed that there was, that trunk line went down. 911 calls were not available. Just a whole bunch of things happened in a long window of time, a 10-hour period of time. The airport was down. So if they did move the servers, that would have been a good time. The interesting thing we worked on in Atlanta, you worked with Amber Connor on this, with Raffensperger, Brad Raffensperger, his TS companies. He had 20. Remember the list she showed us of all his companies that were involved, their Chinese subsidiaries. And then this Ron Raffensperger is the CTO of Huawei, the one who's done all the backdoors for our cell phones and every other device made in China that we have in our houses. And I thought, wow, I wonder if they were talking at all during the election evening. Because you could have two brothers or distant relatives, both with the last name of Raffensperger, talking, and it would seem like a normal conversation. Unless somebody said, hey, look at this. This is weird. Then you would need to go get those servers. Once that came forward, you'd need to get the trunk line to, which goes through San Francisco. Lee has confirmed that. To Hawaii and then Guam. Used to live on Guam, and then on to China, Japan, and then China. So
yeah, the swamp is definitely deep in Georgia. I learned that, George, and I did two stories, and actually about a GBI agent with the last name Sullivan, who was found apparently dead of suicide. They were speculating no cause of death was given in the obituary, but you did a follow-up on that, George?
Yeah, I went to where he worked, and I talked to a workmate of his in Statesboro. And he said, oh, he's not related to the kid who worked for the campaign, Governor Kemp.
Harrison Deal.
Harrison Deal. He's not very similar explosion to what happened in Nashville. And it's the same thing with the 3 explosions. People haven't listened to the testimony, but the 3 explosions. And if first thing I said was, this is Andy McCabe trying to prove a fertilizer bomb can knock down a building. You know, he's been working on that ever since OKC. Fertilizer bombs are not going to knock down steel reinforced concrete. You need thermite or C4 or something high explosive. It's not going to be one of these farm bombs. Anyway.
And OKC was the McVeigh case that McCabe worked back in the 90s.
Yeah, that was his first big case going into the FBI evidence lab. And why was he in there in the FBI evidence lab?
And why didn't they figure out some way to get the children out and the victims?
Might have been an operation going on there too. There was a lot of stuff going on. That was obviously covering the Waco case.
Yeah,
that same group there. So anyway, I just looked at the forensics here. Look like a fertilizer bomb, and then 2 other pre-wired cars. The 2 other cars that exploded in 2 other wired explosions, remote control explosions, not in the initial explosion causing secondary explosions. From what I saw and the charring and so forth, and you can look and see on the building if you have like. It looks like when a bomb goes off in a war and all the shrapnel hits, you can see the pockmarks in the brick, right? This had more of the charring, like just a bunch of gasoline. So we'll see. It just happened on Christmas Day when everybody's talking about the election, you know, and there's Andy McCabe right there at 8 a.m. in his perfect suit, ready to talk about it, you know, like, you know, you look like Timothy McVeigh, you know, just ready to go. So it does look like an information operation of some type, but we don't know.
The timing certainly is quite suspicious because, you know, Christmas morning, everybody's relaxing. Lots of people are on their phones or
opening their presents.
Watching TV. TV's on in the background.
Yeah. So, families are all together. We're looking at the presents, and here's Andy McCabe on TV.
Really the best time for maximum exposure of a spook operation. We're at one.
You know, this does remind me of a question I've been wanting to pose. What happened to the active shooters? Why don't we have any more active shooters? I haven't seen any since Trump took office. It seems to me that they used to. I mean, right up to that one in Florida with the FBI guy's son. David Hogg, remember? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the last big one we've had that's hit the news. Maybe people are still getting shot. I don't mean they're not, but what we're not having is that as a big multimedia story that just takes over the news, like Sandy Hook did. Those things don't seem to be happening under the Trump administration, and I wonder if that is an indication that there is a power struggle. And when Trump's team is in charge, they can't get away with that. So they stop. And then when, you know, they get, I'm just saying, I hope I'm wrong, but if Biden comes in, are they going to start running the single shooter things again? Very cynical thing to say, but God damn it, I've been taught to be cynical.
Well, I think you have different false flags for different things that you need in your budget, right? If you need MRAPs, Eddie and I were talking about this morning.
Mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicles.
Yeah, if you need MRAPs, you have active shooters. Hey, we got to protect our police officers. So once I get a $5 billion buy with DHS and we give out all the MRAPs, remember, everything is to push down an insurrection should it come. So you have to guise every one of these things in a false flag, right? And you couldn't roll in. Imagine Andy McCabe and Strzok rolling in a Ford Econoline van. Let's just say it's this van because I love the Oswald van. Right, there they are.
It's like the mystery machine.
There's McCabe and Andy. And they roll in and say, you know, we're going to need those NSA servers today. We traced some communication between China and Brad Raffensperger and this Ron Raffensperger. Let's just say. with Huawei. It's interesting that Patrick Byrd said that there is a company, a Chinese company out there already in trouble for hacking, right? That he can't say the city. The city's going to be Guangdong, however you say that Guangdong thing. And they were communicating the night of the election to the Secretary of State. Immediately I say, I know who the Secretary of State is. It's Brad Raffensperger. So tell me all the people with the same last name of Raffensperger in China. Let's start there. What do we have after that? Andy McCabe and Strzok showing up with a Econoline van saying, hey, can we have the servers?
And you know what it says on this side? It says clean right.
Yeah, this is the dry cleaners.
The cleaners.
Yeah, they take you to the cleaners.
The crime scene cleaners.
Cleanup operation. And isn't it? I mean, it was the RV, and then Andy McCabe. I said, how long is it going to take Andy McCabe when he gets his little moment on CNN at 10 a.m. in the morning when everybody's opening their presents? How long is it going to take him to say white supremacist? And the CNN lady, right? This fits the signature of white supremacists. And then Andy McCabe almost said, yes, the ones we develop at various centers when we have fake websites for militia recruiting. Oh, I didn't mean to say that out loud. But if you look today, this morning, you'll see a Tennessee State militia recruiting website. And this is our story yesterday. This is exactly the same kind of recruiting outreach that my guy, Deep, who turned out to be an FBI informant that I didn't know, Deep Uranium, did with the West Virginia militia. He gave them the plans of the Clarksburg headquarters, the new headquarters of the FBI, and he taught them how to make bombs. He was getting them paying their bomb-making classes and so forth. So eventually, an Oswald comes in and does the bomb, and then parks the van there, and we whip them all up into you hate mass surveillance. This is where you can knock down all the mass surveillance, and then they give them a fertilizer bomb that just chars the buildings. So, and we get the servers. To me, it's a simple operation, but that's my initial take. I don't have all the proof. Right?
That's when you said white supremacists, and I just there they go, and my brain is right to another city in Tennessee, Memphis, and James Earl Ray, who was a patsy. He did not shoot Dr. King. That's been proven in a civil trial, and that's a fact. But they still hanging on James Earl Ray because he's a white man from down south, and it just fits their narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's their MO. I think is really going back to the racial division of dividing and conquering. It's it's very simple, and it does seem repetitive, but it's the tactic I think they really fall back on in many ways.
Well, it's interesting because as soon as I heard about Nashville, I thought Andy McCabe, because I was in Seattle in 2000 at the Space Needle where they were supposed to bomb the Space Needle. I thought of you and me being in Centennial Square in front of the CNN headquarters on the first false flag. The
Olympic bombing.
Yeah, they sent with
or failed Olympic bombing.
Yeah, with Richard Jewell. Then at 96 we had OKC, or 95 we had OKC. Then we had 93 and the World Trade Center went in Andy McCabe's area, JTTF area. Then, of course, Andy McCabe's the key guy hiring all the pyrotechnic, PTEC, the Muslim group that just happens to be in the building while the Israeli art students are wiring.
Which George wrote about in Black Lives Matter.
Pre-wiring the buildings. You can't pull a building and collapse a building if it isn't pre-wired. Somebody had to pre-wire Building 7 before Building 7 collapsed. No one went in and wired it after the, to pull the building. It had been pre-wired. Who pre-wires their own building? I don't know. I guess you planned obsolescence, I guess. But anyway, PTEC, Andy McCabe is the guy who recruits those guys, gives them the Blackberries, right? So I just, why is Andy McCabe always going out to the mosques? Task Force went out, and I went out to the little bomb-making school they had here. PTEC had a little bomb-making school. Why do you need a Harvard scientist to teach you about the Quran? Why does he have to have a chemistry background and knows all about bomb-making to teach you the Quran? If people may remember, Task Force and I went out there, and she went in there and knocked on the window. So anyway, we were following the tracks of PTEC. Anyway, God rest her soul. Another book. That's another plug. And there's pictures of that with Task Force with Adam Schiff's Worst Nightmare. There you go.
Well, you still have some books up on Amazon, don't you?
Yep, your dad's book's up there.
Okay.
Blackberries Matter still up there. You can still get Adam Schiff's Worst Nightmare. I put some books up on for free on my Patreon. Between the Devil and the DNC is up there. My next book, At Dawn We Struck, spelled like Peter Struck. At Dawn They Struck is going to be on Amazon. We're going to rewrite Somewhere Under the Rainbow about Kolomoisky and outsourcing the chemical weapons and biological weapons program for the CIA. And then
The band Somewhere Under the Rainbow, correct? That's one of the band ones.
Yeah, that's banned. We're going to rewrite it though, so we're going to get it out. And then the other one is YouTube's Finest Hour, which is about some NATO players visiting during the outbreak of the Wuhan virus. So yeah, we're going to rewrite them all.
That's excellent.
And put them out there.
Well, George and Addy, you guys are doing the work that should be done by the mainstream media, but they're just not going to do it. So you guys have risen to the occasion, and you're doing it day after day. I don't even think you took Christmas off, did you?
No, we worked all. Tell them about the Georgia Guidestones. I didn't get the book report from your trip.
Yeah, I do need to get that out as well. So excuse me on that, Amber. Amber Connor and I went to visit the American Stonehenge, as some people call it, which is maybe somewhat blasphemous from your point of view, on the Georgia Guidestones, which we visited. It's created by this guy called R.C. Christian, was his pseudonym, which leads some people to believe it's a Rosicrucian background or motivation for, which is, I guess, a sect of Christianity. Either that or some other Kabbalist nature of motivation was for that as well. And you look at the Guidestones, and it, mostly seems reasonable, the stuff that they talk about. But I think it's the very first guideline for humanity is to maintain the population of under 500 million in, I think it's in concordance with nature, something to that effect was the wording. But it's very, very interesting story because he maintained his anonymity, and it's quite an obelisk. It's very large. It's quite expensive. And that county there in Georgia is known for its granite production and granite mining. And it's made completely out of granite. We also went to see the Granite Museum there as well. And it's protected or under surveillance, I think 24/7 by the sheriff's office there as well, which I find quite interesting, that basically a venture capitalist can just create a monument if he has the money to. So Georgia Guidestones,
Do you want to kick in on this? Or?
Subject of much conspiracy theories in Georgia.
I've been very much into the population control literature. I've done one reading from Jim Mars's book called Population Control, which is his last book that he wrote before he died, at least the last one is published. And it's a topic, unfortunately, that we all have to look at, because how are they going to get from nearly 8 billion now to 500 million? And if you're wondering, where all these exotic VIRUSES come from, you might think that there are people who are actively executing a program of genocide in order to what they have decided, and this is the greatest minds of 1895, that have decided that nature can only handle 500 million people. And so, and they planned it all out. They created these trusts that, are these unending requirements for spending money to get scientists to do things against humanity in order to actually reduce it. So it's a huge topic, and it's one that I've been particularly researching. So I don't have any conclusions to give you right now, but I am right now in the middle of seriously looking at this topic. It comes right out of my study of eugenics and all of that craziness that is so involved with the Rockefellers. It's all part of the same malaise that we're suffering right now, Addy. It's that these plots that were laid back 110, 120 years ago are having their effect upon us, and it's diminishing our health, the quality of our lives. I mean, and they create things to do this. I don't think that HIV was a natural emergence. I think it was created. That's just my opinion. I'm not a doctor. Please don't quote me on it. But I don't think I'm alone in that. So yeah, I'm very interested in it, and I think that once we peel back the layers of a Petraeus and a Kissinger and a Ted Shackley and all of these villains that we've been studying, we're going to find that there are highly powered forces that are directing all this, and it is in the name of exactly that, reducing the population by whatever means they can get away with, because it's got to be secret. They don't want us to find out. It's just like George Carlin says, they're in a club, and we're not in it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned population control and the Rockefellers, and it really makes me think of the time or the moment in time when I learned just to the extent of the American funding of the Nazi war machine and really rebuilding Germany. Because I think as a student in this country of the public educational system, you get taught that World War II was the good war. You get taught that, Germans are the bad guys. And I've spoken about this before, how I used to have contempt for Germans because of this, the way they spin this story. But you learn that, Germany wasn't a completely independent, isolated fascist state that Hitler just recreated from the ground up. They had most of their funding was from American capitalists, American venture capitalists. And learning that, and, John said, mentioned the Rockefellers as well, that was part of their population control, because war is the poor fighting the poor, as Ryan once put it. It's not good versus evil, and it never really is.
Yeah. Well, I'll just leave because we're at the top of our hour, but we started 7 minutes late, so we get a little bit of time, right?
You bet.
Yeah. Okay. I like asking questions once you build your kind of intelligence mosaic in any situation, and just start asking questions. Like, I know, for instance, that J. Edgar Hoover received the memo in June of 1961 about the van. Where's the van? It keeps going. But anyway, about the Econoline van. I just love the image of Andy McCabe driving the van with Peter Strzok. And sorry.
You still have that switcher function on there?
I do. Yeah.
Just open it up.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, where's my switcher?
There it is.
There it is. Okay, yeah, here we go. We're going to do this right. I should have been doing this already, but we...
Yeah, that's cool, though.
Okay, here we go.
All right, let's see here.
So there. I'll share. Allow John to take control. Sure, why not?
All right.
And that's the camera.
Okay. Oh, we don't want that. You pushed the wrong button.
I did.
Go back.
Hold on, everyone.
We thank everybody for tuning in on this Boxing Day, day after Christmas.
Push share the device. Now push
share the
screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Start broadcast.
All right. And I will just go through some of the photos here that you've seen earlier in the show. Why not have fun with all of them?
All right. Here you go, George. You are now on McDuff _2020.
Okay. Well, here we are. This is one of. Let's start with this. This is the book CIA at War. Ronald Kessler talking about that March meeting with Dwight Eisenhower and the CIA, giving him a $13 million business budget to overthrow Cuba. And Bissell and Helms are the two guys planning it. Okay? And you see there Dulles meets with Johnny Roselli and Sam Giancana. We'll get to the Nosenko case. The Nosenko, you're going to find, is going to be the McDuff in Russia. he was running the what they call the tourist division, which is where all the KGB spied on all the incoming tourists. The service was called In Tourist. All right, so we're following the McDuff story. I was doing that this morning. Oops, that's the dog that was loose here. William Harvey is one of the key guys that gets put in charge of this thing called Operation 40. He was at the same listening station in Germany that Wes, our Wes, was at. And this is where he made a Cold War connection with the guy who was running the station in Miami.
And Operation 40 was the Cuban exile group.
To overthrow Castro.
Right.
Yeah, out of the Miami office, which they called JM Wave. So here's Tracy Barnes. Here's another one of the people that are involved in that operation. There's you and me yesterday, so I don't have all the pictures here. But we were just doing some annotations yesterday here, so here's some of that fun. How McCabe goes back 20 years with Hillary Clinton providing FBI support. But there's Guy Bannister's card there in New Orleans.
Who was one of the handlers of Oswald, correct?
Right, yeah. And there's a picture of Guy Bannister. There's David Ferry, for all of those folks who haven't seen David Ferry before.
CIA pilot.
And then, of course, here's Robert Mayhew talking about how he was working as early as the 50s with Giancana and Trafficante, etc. I'll turn it sideways with Roselli, right? So there's Mayhew. This is the guy who's buying the same cars that... here's Guy Bannister's article. Oops.
Keep it upright.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Here's Guy Bannister's Articles of Incorporation there in New Orleans for the Friends of Democratic Cuba. These are the people that buy the vans, right? Here's your Friends of Cuba bowl. There's your McCabe struck van, for Nashville. There it is. There's the Econoline that you remember this one, John? The half van. Remember seeing those?
Yeah.
Yeah. They were really distinctive. There's the interrogation of the car dealer who sold the 10 vans. There's just one of the guys who was also in this is named Giacolone. And that's the same guy who was number 2 at the FBI, and Andy McCabe was number 3. And they got rid of a Giacolone so Andy could become number 2. Just shows you how closely intertwined, the mob is with the FBI. But there's Jimmy Hoffa, who also contributed some weapons. Some people say they needed 10 vans because there was 10 different crime bosses that were going to contribute weapons. We don't know that to be true yet, but we know Hoffa did ship weapons for Bad Pigs.
David Underdown has always got the good question and what he wants to know. And actually, I thought of this question too, so we both probably are geniuses.
Yeah, well, we knew that already.
Yeah.
Who were the 10 drivers of the 10 vans?
Well, I think we could start the list right now, but I'm sure, Felix Rodriguez was probably one of them, and then Quintero was one of them. All the assassins probably each drove a part of JM Wave, Operation Mongoose. Each of the assassins, right, would make the most sense to me. I wouldn't want different drivers. That's more witnesses. But anyway, there's Sam Giancana for those who don't have that. I just kind of read all these into the record. That right there is Carlos Marcelo, yeah. But isn't it funny how David Ferry, Robert Kennedy, see the thing is, this is where McDuff comes in, because Robert Kennedy knew Marcelo was the one who organized and accumulated all the weapons. And he's trying to deport Marcelo. And isn't it funny how Marcelo is deported in the first days of the Kennedy administration to where? Guatemala, supposedly where he was born, but also the place they launched the Bay of Pigs investigation. So right from the very first formation of this special group that Bobby Kennedy and John F. Kennedy formed, they're going after Marcelo. Bobby Kennedy is seen in front of St. Patrick's Church with a sock up over his he's unkempt, hasn't dressed, he's got socks over his pant legs, and he's going through New York Times looking for Carlos Marcelo. So that's going to be a clue on there's Santo Traficante, and there's our Meyer Lansky. So there you have some of the things that are going to be in the new book that weren't in the old book, and that just gives you a taste of, and that's $4 paperback, $4.
$4.
$2 for Kindle, so it's cheap. So you're going to want to buy it, the
I
updated version.
I want the paperback. I want
$4.
Yeah.
I love the physical tactile experience
Because
of
I
reading.
get my yellow marker and I'm like marking it up, and then I write little notes in them, and
And
I put them on the
footnotes.
shelf so in case I forget what's in them, I have them and I can just pull them out.
And John's library is quite impressive, folks. I have to say, it's more than just what you see on the screen here. It's very nice. I'm actually a little envious, John. You have quite the library.
Well, you're always welcome to come and sit down and pull out a book.
Wow, thank you so much, sir.
Oh,
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I love books, as everybody knows by now here on my channel. And well, guys, thanks for being here. And,
Thank you.
And it's been a really enjoyable talk for me. We didn't get any fisticuffs going, even though it's Boxing Day.
There you go. Annie McCabe, I'll say that for Annie.
All right. Okay, well, merry day after Christmas, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your holiday today. Thanks for being with us here on McDuff Channel. Thank you for the super chats, and I'll be back tonight reading from The War Against the Weak by Edwin Black, one of my essential books that is going on the book train at screamingospreys.com.
Excellent.